Hello, and welcome to a new video. I'm Philipp Hartenfeller, product lead at United Codes, and as you probably know, we at United Codes, we love to extend AJAX, and the core backbone of AJAX being extensible is plugins. And today we're going to look at how we can create a region plugin, a very simple demo region plugin just to get started and making it refreshable. That's the most hard part in this sense. So grab a coffee, sit back and enjoy. So I've created a small demo application and I'm here in the shared components. If you may know, here on the other components part, here's this plugin section. So let's jump in here. I have already created a test one here, but if we want to create a plugin, we can click this green button and create a new one from scratch. And then we get this beautiful UI and we have to select a name. So we're just gonna name it my region plugin. Internal name is basically the internal ID. It makes sense that you, for example, use your domain like com.unitedcodes, so it's really unique. Otherwise there could be issues if another developer just uses the same internal name as you. Now let's move on. We have this type selection here. Default is now template components. We have a lot about template components also on our channel. Check them out if you like. But we got a lot of different other types. REST data plugins is a thing. Process, item, direct action, authorizations. But we're gonna look at regions. I guess it's something with item, I guess the most interesting one to most developers. Okay, so now we selected region, we get this source selection here. We can dump our PL SQL code here. And okay, so what PL SQL code do we actually need to write in here? This is not really telling, unfortunately. But down here, there's this callback section. We're going to use it later, but it's interesting here. It says we need a render procedure or function name. And here in the help text, it actually shows us some sample code we can copy. For example, here, region type plugin. This is item, so really be careful. Check the one you want to develop for. And here it says region type plugin render procedures must implement the following interface. And we're just going to copy that and use that in our plugin. So easily done. We have to give a name to our procedure, call it render region. And it's just a normal procedure. So we have our block structure here. And what this render procedure needs to do is basically, as the name tells, it renders the plugin. Rendering meaning it's going to output an AJAX page. AJAX pages are HTML. So you need to render the HTML basically in here. And that's actually pretty easy. So I want to do a random number, but like to get started, we can just do http.p. That's the internal function to render HTML basically. And we can do any div in here. It could say hello world or something. And that would already be it. It's not super interestingly, but for our take here, to make it a little bit more understandable and like see that it actually changes over time, we can just generate a random number. So let me just add a variable in here, and it's just going to call demo as random.value and gets us a random number between 1 and 100. Any region in AJAX has a static ID, be it auto-generated or you manually override it. We can get that with just calling pRegion.staticID. So we basically get that as a parameter in here. Just store it in a local variable. And what we definitely should do is like tell our div which ID it has. So this is the most parent element in our plugin. So let's give it the ID. So it's just going to be an HTML div with the ID of our static ID. Okay, so next up we say random number is. And then what I'm going to do here, I could just like embed that thing in here like this, but I'm actually going to wrap that in a span, and we might want to access that later, but would be fine for now if it wasn't in a span. And I'm also going to give it a class, And of course, I want this to be my random number. Can break it up so it's more readable. And yeah, that's basically our first render function. We can then copy the name procedure here, paste that, and click create plugin. Okay, I forgot a semicolon here. Okay, so we're ready to go. Our plugin is now created, and it's called My Region plugin. So if I go to page 1 here, I have to refresh it to actually see the plugin I just created. And then I can create a region in here. I call it My Plugin. And then I can click on type here, and the first thing here, I have application components, and here is my created plugin. We can now run the page, and we can see here random number 99. And we refresh, and it's always a different number. So that's working already perfectly well. Okay, so yeah, so I have my thing, and a lot of times you want to refresh a specific region in a specific case. For example, you have an Apex and report with a form on it, so you click on a row, modal pop-ups, and you edit the name of the row and click save, and then you want to refresh that report so the user sees that the changes he did are actually applied. So for that, we have this dynamic action refresh thing, right? So let's add a button here into the copy, call that refresh, give it the icon, and then add a dynamic action to it. And as an action here, we're going to call refresh and select our region. And yeah, I would hope that this now draws a new random number, but it does nothing. Oh, that's too bad. And that's because we have actually some work to do to implement that. So the thing is with the render function, it only runs when you load a page. So that's why when I reload the page, I get a new number. It's just calling this render function here, and the render function draws a number and basically renders that HTML. There is no current hook for the plugin to refresh that content. It doesn't have the understanding of what we're doing here, or also what to update. Basically, maybe we want to also change this text. Plugin doesn't know what should it actually do. And also, like when we do this refresh thing here with the button, you can't dynamically change out the HTML behind that. If you want interactivity in HTML, it's always JavaScript that's running and taking over. So yeah, we have some stuff to do. And luckily, it's not that complicated. It's more work, but it's not complicated, I would say. So as you could have seen here, there's actually another procedure name here, and it's called AJAX. And AJAX is basically asynchronous JavaScript calls. And again, we can have a look in here, and we can see, again, it has an interface that's pretty similar. And we can just copy that, go to our code. And I name that AJAX region. And then we want to draw a random number again. So copy that one. So this should run when we click refresh and it draws a random number again. We have to return this number somehow to the JavaScript handler we're going to write next. And yeah, the best way I think to handle this is like to wrap it in a JSON. So it's a JSON structure we can pass, and JavaScript does handle JSON really well. So let's do that. And this is fairly easy to do, luckily. So we have our number. We just can call Apex JSON open object. And then we can say apex.json.write, give it a name. So this is now a JSON object, and we give the key random number, and the value is our variable here. Then we can say close object. And so this is basically just putting the curly braces, the closing one there. And then in the end, we can say apex.json close all. That's always nice to have in the end of your procedure, so you have no leaking stuff. And then we are already done. This procedure is fairly simple. It just rolls a new random number and then puts it in a JSON. AJAX region, you just need to again put that in here. And we can click apply changes. This won't still not work because like we have to actually connect the refresh event from here to calling this JavaScript thing. And this gets now a little bit more complicated. We need to write a little bit of JavaScript. Basically, to call this AJAX region, we get an AJAX identifier. This is like a secret or random kind of string that looks pretty complicated, but it's making sure that only this plugin is allowed to call this AJAX function. So it's a random secret, and we have to tell it our plugin so it can at least use it. So to do that, the simplest approach is to add a function to your JavaScript window, which is a global object, and we call for each plugin that's rendered, hey, please initialize me. I have the static ID of this, and this is my AJAX identifier. Use it later if you want to refresh. So we can do that. We can, in the render function, call apex javascript dot add onload code. And this is just a normal JavaScript call that's just run when the page is loaded. And what we're going to do in here, let me paste that. And this is basically calling window, that's a global object in the browser. Dot my region plugin, we're going to create this object in there, and there's an init function. As the first parameter, we're going to pass our ID. As the second one, we're going to pass our AJAX identifier. So just a function with 2 parameters. We're calling apply changes. Can take a look here now. We will get a JavaScript error, and it says like undefined is not an object, basically telling us we haven't defined our function we're calling yet. When we show the page source here, we can actually find our call to our function in here. So it's window my region init, we get this region ID, it's a random one, and we get this weird long AJAX identifier. So next up, we need to define this JavaScript that actually handles this thing. So we go back into our plugin. We have like a file section down here. We're gonna create a file. I call it index.js, right? And in here, we first need to define this window object thing. Again, it's window.myRegionPlugin.init. So we need to tell window basically that myRegionPlugin is something. We can just call an object. But now here's a small hack actually. Like if you have another plugin and you also want to hook it into like my region plugin, you could of course change that to your company name or something. So you have like your namespace there. You don't want to override each other's thing. So you can do basically this here. It's basically referencing itself. And then we have an empty object. And basically when somebody else already defined this global object, then leave it, and then we're going to append to that object. So we add an init function to it, and assigning a function, basically I can just use a window function with this weird syntax with this braces, this arrow and curly braces, and this is just the function parameters in here. So we have a region ID and the AJAX ID we want to pass here, and then we can just first debug out what's happening here. Okay, so this is Apex debug. And for all of this, please go to the Apex documentations, the PL SQL and the JavaScript, and read about it. But this Apex debug namespace is basically a wrapper around the console. So this will log stuff into the console. But the nice thing is it's aware of your debug level. So this info level will only log if you're on a debug level. There are even different levels, so you can have trace, which is an even higher level, so that when you need to really deeply debug a big bug, you have to can go to the highest level and see so much info, whereas you just want to see what's going on, you can go to a different level. But yeah, being said, we're just going to log this, and we go back to our region plugin, and we just scroll down again to our files. Can see here it automatically created a minified file that's a little bit smaller. It's basically deleting a lot of empty space, renaming stuff, etc. to make the file size smaller. And we get this nice reference here. and we need to paste that into the JavaScript thing in the files URLs to load section. Otherwise, this JavaScript file wouldn't be included at all. So we can manually tell the plugin, please load this file for me. Apply changes, can go back again, refresh our page. We don't have any error anymore. If we look into the console, we can see nothing, but if we enable debug on the info level, we can see initializing my region plugin here, and we see the both parameters. Nice. So this works. Okay, now actually we should add some functionality to it. So we go here. And so I'm going through this here now a little bit quicker. Please check the documentation again of these things to really understand in depth what's going on. But we have an interface that's called apex.region.create. And this basically adds the event hooks for our plugin region. So we pass our region ID, so Apex knows, okay, if you call refresh on this region, please use these handlers. We're going to specify here. So this is again an object, and in this object we first have to tell them what's the type of my plugin. I just use my identifier, and then we can say what are we doing on a refresh call. So exactly what we're doing with the dynamic action, and now we define here what's actually happening when this is done. So again, it's a function, so we use this weird arrow function syntax here, but we don't have any parameters. And in here, then we're going to call, or we want to call our AJAX thing, right? So the one that draws us a new number and returns the JSON with it. So for that, there is another function we can use. It's called apex.server.plugin. Okay. And in here, we have to first pass our AJAX ID. So it actually knows, okay, you're that thing, okay, I need to call your logic. Because I pass this one here, we can just reuse it here. And then I could add parameters. So that's nice if you develop a more in-depth plugin that may need some parameters to know what's doing, basically loading another set of data or saving some data. Then you want to pass some data the user just entered or requested. So you could here pass like a number or something, or a string like method is save, and then handle that in your AJAX procedure. But for us, simple example, we don't pass anything here. And then it's another object, the options here. It's nice, you can see here actually the type, the shape it expects. First we say, okay, what do we expect back? We expect a JSON. So we have to type data type JSON. Great. And then there's another function we have to define, and basically when the call succeeds. So we call this AJAX function, the database, the request gets sent to the database runs some computation and then comes back. So we have a callback function that gets called when this is done with the result. So it's called success. So we have a function here, and it's again this weird arrow function. And in here we get our data back. And let's first just debug it so we can see if it's actually working. And also what's nice to have, so if there is a success case, there can also be an error save. When like the PSQL function throws an exception. So I'm just going to paste that here, but you can add an error handler, and we just use apex debug.error to debug our error information here, but hopefully in our case it won't error out. So again, what did we do here? We have created this init function that gets called when we load the page. We pass our region ID, our AJAX ID. Then we're going to call apex region create to tell Apex, hey, this is our region, our plugin region. It has this ID, it's type of this. And when it receives a refresh event, please run this code. And this code just calls our AJAX backend thing. And then when it successfully returns the values, the JSON we requested, we're going to log it. Okay, save changes, and now fingers crossed that this actually does something. So reload my page. And then when we click refresh, we see refreshing region success. And then we log the object random number 63. Let's do it again. 86, 52. So it's working great. So remember when I told you that I added this span to the HTML? So we can quickly look at it again. So we have this div with our ID, random number is, and then we have this span here. Why did I add a span? Because now we of course want to show the new value. And the span makes it easy for me to target this text in here, the random number, and to change it easily. So in here, what we're gonna do, we use jQuery to basically target our element. And in jQuery, we have to do this hash symbol to target an ID. This is the same as the CSS selectors, if you know them. And then we have our region ID in here, right? We're going to copy that region ID in here, so we reference it with our ID thing here. And then we have our class in the span. I could use the span or just use the class in there. And then we can call the function text to basically change the text of it. And then we have the data, and in there there's this attribute random number. So now when we do again save and we go back here to our demo app and we refresh, we can see, yeah, it actually changes the value on the page. Okay, luckily now here this is the same value returned. Okay. If you look at the documentation of this region create thing, it shows that you can actually define more stuff. Like a good plugin has like a handler for focus. What happens if you focus the region? If you have like an input, a search thing, then it should focus that one. It has like a filter feedback, if you can filter any data, etc. I recommend you to go to apex.oracle.com/JSRP for the JavaScript API. And in here, there's actually the apex.region namespace, and here's the create. And here are some examples of how to do it. Here they show you how to define a filter in the focus event, for example. So yeah, I hope this helped understanding how plugins work. Of course, this is just a sample that's not really useful, but it gets you started with implementing an AJAX callback. Thank you for watching this. If you have any feedback, please post it into the comments, and thank you for tuning in. See you in the next one. Bye bye.